Today on nanoStream Ready Talks, I'm joined by Austin Hinton, Sales Enablement Engineer at QuickLink. Austin has spent years working at the intersection of broadcast, web-based platforms, and real-world production workflows, and we've worked in some of the same places. QuickLink StudioPro is a full production studio, on-prem or cloud-based, and includes integration with nanoStream, enabling true real-time, ultra-low latency streaming for interactive live productions. In his role at QuickLink, Austin works directly with customers, partners, and sales teams to translate real production requirements into practical technical solutions. In this conversation, we'll dig into how QuickLink fits into real-time streaming workflows, what problems they're solving for production teams, and why low latency, reliable delivery actually matters in practice, not just on a spec sheet. So let's get into it. Austin, welcome to nanoStream Ready Talk.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Thank you for taking the time. So let's jump into Studio Pro. Tell us what Studio Pro is and what problems it solves that traditional remote production tools struggle with.
Yeah, it's a video production box. Everything that you would see in a live production is incorporated within Studio Pro. So basically, traditional tools, they'll focus on contribution or video conferencing and not a full-on production. A Studio Pro basically gives broadcast teams a lot of control over their production and then remote contributors that are joining in. So it'll solve things like complexity, reliability gap, bringing in remote guests that you would usually have to stitch together different platforms and tools to bring those people in. Everything is basically ran off of one interface, and it brings all those pieces together in one workflow. It's pretty robust system, but it's very easy to learn. I've been here for about 4 months now, and I'm kind of getting the ins and outs of it, but the setup and the execution within Studio Pro is pretty flawless.
And how big of a job can it handle? I mean, you have clients in broadcast, so it's got to be able to be pretty flexible and, as you say, robust.
Yeah, it's a scene-based system, so you can bring in up to 64 sources. That would be camera feeds, remote contributors, other computers where you may have presentations or slides on, graphic overlays, audio. All of that can be incorporated within 64 individual sources, and you can customize that within 120 scenes. So if you want 120 different looks for your broadcast or production, the system can handle all of those components coming in.
So you can create each scene can be a look.
Exactly. Yep. So you can bring in, say you have 5 PTZ cameras and 2 SDI cameras. You want to have those in individual looks, but you don't want to customize saying, hey, I have to go from this one look and I can't use this resource to go for another look. Everything would be in scene based. So you can fluctuate how you want to use those 7 camera sources in different looks in each individual scene. So it's pretty cool how the functionality works there.
So everything's remote production now, right? You walk around NAB and everybody's talking about remote production, but with Studio Pro, you can go on premises or in the cloud. What are you seeing people? How are you seeing people use it? How are your customers installing it and using it?
I see a lot of on-prem happening in facilities that are already established. So those hardware establishments that are locked down, that's where the hardware will come in. For the remote, I think that excels for flexible production. So if we're thinking sports broadcast or concerts or iGaming, where there's people that are in multiple locations, you want to bring them into production, the cloud instance works great there. Just with a network connection, you bring in all of your sources, you push out your feeds, your streams out to nanoStream, things like that, and everything can be operated from different locations as opposed to just everyone in one control room locally.
So my biggest concern, remote production wise, is obviously connectivity.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to set up a studio in my office, I would need 2 or 3 reliable internet connections. What are some of the problems that come up with remote production, and how does QuickLink resolve that?
I mean, I think it's the consistency of connectivity is one of the main things that you would look at. Within Studio Pro, there's an ultra low latency contribution within the system. So within anything that's remote production, contributors that are coming in, they'll drop off a call or the quality will fluctuate. Latency can become unpredictable. But on top of that, you're stitching together different tools, in common setups, but within Studio Pro, everything is reliant in one system. So QuickLink kind of addresses that within their design, and it's been something that's been, super reliable, super confident in workflows, whether you're setting up at a home office or, in a remote location or on the fly with, a dongle or a hotspot. It's been really adaptable to work in multiple locations.
So the components of QuickLink aren't third-party components.
Correct, they're not. You
Oh,
can bring in
that's
third-party components if you want to for, like, remote callers and like Zoom and Teams, but everything else within the system is native to QuickLink Studio Pro.
that's interesting because it's the same thing we do. So everything within nanoStream is controlled by us. We don't have to call somebody else to fix something.
Right, right. And I think
Tell me about Studio Pro combined with nanoStream. And specifically the latency. We can talk about nanoStream's low latency,
Mhm.
especially now with Media over Quick, where we're we're 250 milliseconds in some cases. But tell me about, the contribution obviously matters
Right.
for all of it. So tell me about QuickLink's side of ultra low latency and how that works with nanoStream.
I think with nanoStream, it improves latency with you guys. It keeps the production local and then pushes out a single stream that's a clear program feed as an output. But going to your streaming platform, it's designed for that ultra low latency. And Studio Pro handles the live switching, the audio, the graphics, those different overlays. And on a high latency cloud mixing, nanoStream then distributes that finished feed. I just said under 500 milliseconds, and that latency is worldwide. So you're in Florida, I'm in Denver. If we were doing like a live production, bringing remote callers from Indonesia or something, everything would sync in properly within acquiring those sources or those camera feeds coming in and then distributing out to a live stream.
I mean, I guess this is along the same lines, but tell me what are some of the constraints to working remotely relative to latency and reliability.
I think a lot of operators don't necessarily have control over the network or the environment that they're in. So, you would overcome that by testing everything early, continuous monitoring and building redundancy within, your setups or your projects. And then, if we're thinking about variable conditions, if it's a concert that's outside or a sporting event that may be in an arena that may have, some kind of crazy infrastructure, those constraints are always going to be in place. But I think within QuickLink and Studio Pro, it kind of adapts to those environments and fits in well with the network connectivity and what sources are being used and how the system is being used within a production.
We had talked to some customers and they're using remote systems, but they'll have a completely separate remote system that they use, that's geographically located somewhere that if there's, I don't know, half the country loses power or something
Right.
like that, they can still run their show
Hmm.
somewhere else. Do you see some of those solutions working for remote production?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, come a long way with network connectivity and all of those different aspects of production. So if there's a live event happening in one location, but the anchors or the studio are in two different locations, and bringing those sources in, I've seen a lot of connections with NDI for example, bringing in sources and then streaming out to different platforms simultaneously. I've seen that work it's been pretty extensive, but it's been really cool to see what's capable and how people utilize what they can do within their productions.
So QuickLink is a NanoStream ready partner, meaning that you've tested and ensured the connectivity to NanoStream, and I believe you've created an easy access, right? Do you have that set up so that a user of QuickLink of Studio Pro can just simply click on NanoStream
Oh yeah.
as the output and the connection is there? What makes Studio Pro a good fit for the program?
I mean, I think that part right there is just the easy setup. Like when I created my NanoStream account, I just go on my Studio Pro and in my options, I select I want to stream. My drop down, it's it's right there to be clicked, and then you just apply your stream key that comes from you guys. So I mean, just the simplicity of you have your production happening within the Studio Pro, and you want to output that to your streaming platform to get to NanoStream. It's 3 clicks tops to get everything up and running. And I mean, since QuickLink and you guys have had like a long trusted relationship, and with the capability of the streaming capabilities and the low latency, it's been a great development. And as that continues to grow with the enhancements in technology, it's a great fit just to have if you are established in the industry, or if you're doing something where you want to get started, of maybe starting off a podcast or something. It's a really easy way to get started and have configuration set up right in front of you, and be able to get going right away.
So what do you think that does for users, for our mutual customers? Where do they see the ROI first?
I think they will see it right away with removing friction of recurring costs. There's still going to be events where you have to ship a truck, for camera and rigs to be everything to be set up. But with this capability of, streaming to multiple destinations, having multiple destinations come into one location, that saves a ton of costs. And, with the carbon footprint of travel and, hotel stay and going from city to city, if there's constant changes for location, it doesn't necessarily have to be the cost for every single event. It's something that you can automatically remove once you utilize the hardware and software and network connectivity, and then have your productions running. You're cutting down the cost of travel, food, stay at different establishments. Some cities cost a little more on certain weekends than others do. So, you're cutting that out also, and, bringing in different types of talent and, workers that are going to be on for each production. Necessarily someone would have to travel to location, but that's something that can be cut down a little bit due to what's provided within, Studio Pro and nanoStream.
So help me out with mistakes that can be made, that production teams might make when, choosing a remote contribution platform and setting it up. What are some of the key things that we have to be concerned about when setting up a remote production environment? And that includes, streaming out the output to a NanoStream.
Yeah, that's a great question. A common mistake can be trying to build up a streaming production platform with different pieces. So already there, if you're doing that, if you want like a best of breed type thing, you're adding in different spots for error. If there's a disconnect between point A and C, you may not know where to look first. I think that when everything is running within the same environment, there's an easy way to troubleshoot in case any issues come up. In practices, different workflows can become messy when you have people that are on part-time or full-time, and someone may not know how to work one piece of the workflow. There can be some issues there. So within those types of use cases, I think within a Studio Pro, the platform kind of solves all of those aspects, because you want your streaming, your graphics, your camera control, recording your ice, all of that being located in one central location makes things a lot easier for operators that are on board full-time, or for someone that may come in just for an event or two.
Right. So you're not stitching a bunch of tools together.
Right.
Which then kind of speaks to this whole validation of Studio Pro as a production platform and as NanoStream as a streaming platform.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think that validation means to the end user?
I mean, it just gives a lot more ease and comfort. I think when you're deployment, and an end user has to train or have knowledge for multiple things, if it's simplified in a way that you can click and have your options available and ready, I think that for the end user, it makes things super essential, because it's a lot faster ramp up time for being able to create what you want to create and have that delivered out. And just for the sense of, hey, I have a question, or I need a workflow advice. It's like, you can come to QuickLink, you have my number, my email, you contact me, we can walk through what we need to set up. And, myself and my team, we're always happy and ready to do that. So I think for us is definitely something that an end user might feel a little more comfortable about when, they want to start creating and broadcasting and streaming.
So let's wrap up with a little look into the future. I mean, what do you think the future of remote? You've been in this game for a bit now, so what do you think the future of remote production's like? What capabilities you think will become the non-negotiables in the next few years?
One of them, I think, for remote people coming into a production, that used to be secondary. Working on shows for, promos, you would have to go to a different studio, a sister station, to set up a record. Now that is more of the primary thing that you would see. If there's a remote guest that's going to be coming in to, speak on the news, they may have a knowledge that, other people maybe can't share. In the past, you would have to go to them, but now you can bring those into your production, wherever they're located, have that easily accessible. And if they want to use, the QuickLink Studio Call to be brought in, or Zoom or Teams, all of that's accessible within that production system. So I think for the remote contribution, that remote people will always be in their own locations as opposed to having to travel or sending camera crews. So I think that's going to be one of the big instances. And then also might see a lot more flexible type productions where, there's a live event happening, but two cameras are in different locations. We've worked on Olympics where, there's multiple cameras for each event. There's going to be different locations for these events now, and bringing that all into one stream, like in a multi-view, you'll have that being more incorporated into live productions, and having that with consistent quality, with the sync compatibility, and also for people that may be watching in a live location, you don't want that delay from watching your stream or your broadcast and then seeing, the Jumbotron in an arena or on a field. All of that can be synced into play. And what we have is something that provides that, and it gives the viewer a great experience of watching, broadcast sporting events, iGaming, any events that they like. It gives them a lot of comfort in as a viewer or fan watching that type of content.
What about the interactivity? I mean, we're seeing more now, these sort of second screen experiences,
Yeah.
or I want to say, for lack of a better term, ride-alongs to major sporting events where there's, in iGaming, for instance, where there's a separate commentary crew talking about an event as it's happening. I mean, where does real time, where does the latency come into play?
I mean, latency is super important for that. Anything with gaming and, live betting is a big thing now. When you're watching a sporting event and making a live bet on, the next play that happens, is it going to be a first down? That sync is super critical for the viewer experience, but also for what you're putting out. Say for online casinos, making your calls prior to the actual action happening on screen. That's where latency comes into play, and it's super critical for those things to happen in real time. So as a viewer, it's kind of something that you're not conscious of saying like, hey, if I make this bet or call too early, then the stream can be delayed or or too fast for, in real time. That's where the sync, the latency and everything comes into play. And, once that's all tied up, nicely knit, it makes the experience, very valuable.
Are there interactive tools within QuickLink? Are there ways to include chat and polling and things like that?
Yeah, within Studio Pro, New Blue Captivate are the real time data-driven graphics that you bring in. So within a production, if you want to have like a QR code and someone were to want to have a chat or have that in a comment section, you can put that onto your broadcast as a graphic overlay. So there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do within the New Blue Captivate graphics, and having those overlays for the second screen experience.
We've talked a lot about iGaming and broadcast, but what about the corporate world? I mean, you're seeing corporate use live streaming so much more now.
Mm-hmm.
And how are they using QuickLink and nanoStream together?
I mean, it's more of a simple factor. There's a lot of corporate entities that have 7 global offices, and they want to do their upfronts at the beginning of the year, to create a type of production that makes the actual broadcast not super boring. You bring in your PowerPoints, your slides, and you talk about that stuff. But to have it in a production style with high quality, and someone that may be directing or switching it, it makes it really simple to say, hey, we have 7 presenters from 7 locations. We want that in one broadcast. Can we have a switcher to do that, to bring all of our components in, but also stream out to a destination? So everything coming into a Studio Pro, going out via nanoStream, it makes everything simple for, a non-expert operator to set up. With the scene-based workflow, you basically have your 7 individual looks. You click between them during each segment of a corporate presentation, and it makes it super simple to have that type of production quality, that type of look going to the employees or to the higher ups, and having these showcased for everyone in real time. It makes things fairly simple. And within a corporate environment, it doesn't have to be an actual production team that comes in. It could be someone on staff that can easily learn how to, click a few buttons and make these broadcasts look like they're on.
What I think is interesting is that using QuickLink's Studio Pro, you can bring in people from multiple locations all over the world, right? But at the same time, your audiences are distributed all over the world. So the power of the two things together, Studio Pro for bringing people in, and then connecting via nanoStream to distribute high quality, adaptive bitrate streams,
Latency, yeah.
low latency, super low latency all over the world is a pretty powerful tool.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. Like every office building that is doing one of these corporate town halls will have, most of them will have an auditorium with a giant screen. Getting that audio in and having that audio distributed to those different destinations within a stream within the actual establishment. All of that being synced together is pretty phenomenal, and how it can work and being set up is pretty simple to make something look like it's complicated or difficult, but it's not necessarily that much. As you go into the studio box and then going out to your nanoStream, it's pretty straightforward, and it's really cool to see how it's been incorporated, in different verticals, not just in corporate, but like for in churches or live casino playing or iGaming, esports, all of that. It's really cool to see the evolution of this type of technology.
Austin, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And we're thrilled to have this partnership with you guys, and,
Same.
looking forward to doing more with it.
Same. Love it.
All right. Austin, thank you from QuickLink. Thank you
Rob.
very much.
Thank you so much.
All right.